I'd like to acknowledge that today we're recording on the traditional lands of the Kaurna people, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Sovereignty was never ceded. You're listening to Unqualified and Unafraid, the podcast where I interview young emerging creatives in Adelaide about just going for it and pushing through self-doubt. Chiranjika Grasby, or Chira, or Poko Ono, is one of Adelaide's most prolific tattoo artists. But more than that, they are a visual artist, curator, business owner, and advocate for emerging Adelaide artists. Having had their works exhibited in and curated for a range of galleries, Chira is a shining example of following your dreams and making a career out of creative pursuits. I'm so excited to chat to Chira about her relationship with the Adelaide tattoo scene and reflections on her impressive career so far. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
So the first question is what I ask all my guests, which is, when was a time where you felt unqualified but you chose to be unafraid?
Probably my most recent job position, because outside of my main day job, I took on a role at an arts organisation, and it was their emerging curator role. But it was the first time I'd had like a office job, very different realm to what I'm used to. And so I entered even the job interview with all this anxiety of like, I'm not going to look professional enough, my CV is not going to look professional enough. But I just kind of did that fake your confidence, fake it till you make it, feel confident in yourself, and then people will read that. And it worked out. Like, I got the job, which is great. But I definitely felt like the space was foreign to me and maybe not my usual realm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. What arts organisation is it?
Guildhouse. So it's a lot of artist residencies they run. They do grants for artists, insurance so that people can do art without feeling like they're, gonna risk their bodies, their practices, materials. So it's like, been really fun to learn about. I feel more qualified now that I've done it.
Yeah, cool. How long have you been doing that for?
So it was a 1-year role, and I started in March of last year. So it's about to end March of this year, which is a bit sad, but kind of nice that it's just been this enclosed little experience. Yeah.
So maybe it would be good if you could introduce yourself, your age, and what your art practices are.
Yeah. So my name's Chira. I'm 26. I'm a tattoo artist, but I also do curating and my own visual arts, which is just a lot of painting, illustration, and a little bit of sculpture as well.
Tell us a bit about Half Pace Studio, which is a studio that you co-own?
Yeah. So I co-own that with my partner, who's also my co-worker at the studio.
Cute.
Basically, we started it in 2020, kind of started 2021, just because I'd worked in a few tattoo studios in the past that were just like not good working environments. I want to be around people that have the same values and morals as me, which I feel like is like a bare minimum to ask in a lot of like creative spaces, that everyone's just nice and creates a good community. So I thought, well, if I'm struggling to find that, I can create that for myself and my friends. So we opened Half Pace as a tattoo space that I guess fostered like queer identities, trans identities, diverse range of people and artists. And we function a little bit more on a community basis than a structured workplace or a business.
I'm interested to know what you mean about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess like I say that because being in the tattoo industry, I know what that means, but I forget other people. That industry is quite unknown to the general public, like how it functions from the inside. Think of like any workplace where you've got a manager or an owner who's like the boss of your space. And so everyone else is kind of an employee that maybe you give a wage to, or you're kind of managing, but the business itself is making profit on that space, right? I didn't want to function like that because I have my own clients, I have my own income. There was no need for me to make extra income from other people. And I think that is how still a lot of old school spaces function, like what I've experienced. So for me, it's more like, let's all chip in equal percentage of like cost of the building, cost of our materials, and then whatever everyone wants to do to make their money, have their clients, they should just feel free to manage that themselves. And it does create a happier work culture, so not surprisingly. So yeah, it's just more me looking out for my friends than running a business, I guess.
Yeah, I love that so much. What would you say to people who are like trying to set up similar kind of arrangements, but they have this like fear instilled in them about going into like agreements with their friends? Like you're saying, you're all chipping in, and like I feel like society makes people like scared of that. Like how did you do you face problems with that, or how did you overcome that fear of like everyone having stakes in it?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, because like there's the saying everyone has with like even share houses with like, oh, never live with a friend, or like never do this with a friend because it ruins friendships. I think it's about having really healthy boundaries first of all with that coworker friendship balance.
Yeah.
You know, how much time is this person in your life in both of those realms? How do you communicate? Communication is the second biggest thing. And I think at the end of the day, having a lot of still kind of businessy clauses or wording that makes you both feel secure. Like something I have in a bit of like a agreement with everyone that works there is like, I'm not going to randomly kick them out unless they've actually done something wrong. You know what I mean? I'm going to be fair, and from their end, they're allowed to always communicate if I'm doing something wrong, and we can kind of just keep each other in check as we go. And I guess I'm lucky that we haven't had any big major stresses so far. But you know, it's like being prepared for the future, planning for worst case and hoping it doesn't happen.
You're one of the most known hand-poked artists in Adelaide. Probably the most known, actually, I would say.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
Tell us where it all began, the tattooing career.
I always think it's like funny when people ask me that, because I think they don't expect my answer, which is like, I was just like tattooing with my friends underage, and like that's more of that like taboo opinion people have on hand poke or like stick and poke. So like, it is like, it's like, you know, drunken party tattoos or like share house tattoos, but you know, now it's a proper studio thing. It is now a proper studio thing, but that doesn't mean I didn't have that like backstory. I mean, that was 10 years ago and the industry was so different. So me and my friends discovering online and through Tumblr, which was kind of our main thing at the time, discovering what hand poke was, there wasn't a presence of it in the industry. There wasn't a lot of education. A lot of the things online were people tattooing themselves. So we were like, yeah, great, this looks fun, let's do that. But I think as I like became more educated, I started getting tattooed once I was, you know, of age to get tattoos. It's like navigating, how does that cross into the professional space? How do I like actually do what I'm doing in a respectful professional way, keeping people safe? And yeah, I think now when I speak to people, I'm like, I learnt the hard way that it's very difficult to be self-teaching something that does require a lot of like health, biohazards, and even just like skills to deal with bodies. So if I could redo my history, I wouldn't start the same way, but at the same time, I had fun being a teenager, getting a tattoo in my friend's bedroom. So they don't look great now, but they're still there. So
when I first got my first hand poke tattoo, I was told that it would fade off in 3 months. Still got it, but you know, it's a nice little memento. I was so naive. I don't know why I believed that.
I still have people asking me, like, are your tattoos permanent?
Yeah.
And I'm like, think about the question that you're asking me.
So did you do like apprenticeships or anything? Like how did you end up learning the health and safety stuff?
When I was tattooing and starting to get tattooed at the time, there was only, from memory, like 2 or 3 people actually hand poking in studios in Adelaide. And so it was like the options for apprenticeships became really minimal, but then I guess like you can't expect every artist to be ready to take on an apprentice or want to. Like that is a big responsibility in itself. And so when I like had a chat with one of them. She's kind of just said like, I was also self-taught. Like there's ways to do that by like getting to know artists, learning information from them, asking questions, like finding those resources even when someone can't be with you in person to teach you,
Right.
if that makes sense. So I did continue a lot of self-teaching in like shared artist spaces.
Yeah.
Where like I'm tattooing, but then across the room is like a graphic designer on his computer, and there's a guy screen printing t-shirts, and there's someone doing this and that, but we're all just like creatives. And I had to do a lot of my learning through friends I made in the industry, sending messages to friends being like, give me advice on this thing, here's this tattoo, can you give me advice and feedback, and like trying to wrangle that a little bit. But it wasn't until 2019 when I got my first actual studio job, like actual tattoo studio job, not just like shared artists, where I was like, wow, being around other tattooers, even though they had a different method to me, was like instant like skills times by 100. Like it was great.
Cool.
A lot of learning like crammed into that time.
And did you have to be able to tattoo like under an ABN and all that, do you have to get like a tattooing license?
Yeah. So when I was first tattooing friends, because I never used to charge for my tattoos. It would just be like maybe once a month a friend wanted something, or you know, a friend of a friend that I felt like someone vouched for them. I'd be like, yeah, I'll give you one, but like, you know, just give me like $10 or something, because I knew that I was just learning and having fun. You know, at that point I still didn't know a lot of that. And as I researched more and met more artists, I found out every state in Australia has really different laws.
Oh, okay.
Which is good to know if someone wants to kind of, you know, travel and work with this job. It's very, very different where you go. But yeah, in Adelaide you have to declare to the Consumer Business Services, which sounds very professional.
Okay.
But you basically just say to them like, yeah, this is what I'm doing. I'm a tattooer. Here's the place I'm working. But here's like all of my life background information.
Oh, okay.
And they do like a real bikey and criminal check on you.
Really?
Which is, I think, good, I guess.
Yeah.
But I had to give them like every address I've ever lived at, my parents' details, my siblings' details, even though my siblings were like young kids at the time. And then a couple months passed and I guess they did their background check. And they're like, okay, yeah, you seem reliable and safe and not a criminal, so here's a number that's like your license number. There you go, you could work now.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not realise that, like, I don't know, I presume that's not for like every kind of business that they do like a full criminal check.
I mean, I hope not for a lot of a lot of workers, but I mean, yeah, everyone's pretty aware that there's a strong bikey history in tattooing, and even though it's not as prominent now, especially in like the CBD, maybe outer suburbs, but it's making sure that businesses are not affiliated, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. You, I feel like, are someone that a lot of young tattoo artists look up to. You've also got all these like curation projects as well. What do you think was like one of the things that was like your biggest help in getting to where you are today?
Wow, that's such a tricky question, because my mind goes to a lot of things. I think there's all the like, what in my brain I think of as like the acceptance speech answers, where like, let's say someone like wins an award and they're giving their acceptance speech, it's always like, and my family and my partner and people that have supported me, because like, yeah, actually your close network is like a big help, because it's all about like feeling supported and feeling like you're able to do that and having people around you help, even if it's just kind of helping you survive. But I mean, I don't know, I think I'm very lucky that the people I've met in the workplaces that I've been, and like whether that's tattooing or it's in galleries or it's, you know, the current curation job I've got, are people that are really open to like skill sharing and teaching, because you do enter all those realms kind of at base level. You feel so, like we were talking about before, like unqualified, or like you don't know what you're doing, and it's those people basically saying like, it's okay to feel that, and just like ask a million questions, like there's no bad question. So yeah, I'm lucky I've come across those kinds of people.
Definitely. Do you have a highlight so far, or maybe like a pinch me moment where you were like, oh my god, I can't believe I'm like doing this as my job or something like that?
It's like it sounds really corny, but I think I feel like that at some level, like every day with my tattoo job, because it's like nice to love my job, and it's nice to have those moments where clients come in and they like love what they're getting, or I hear like some of my coworkers' clients come in and they just say something nice about the studio, whether it's complimenting like our plants or our art collection or our windows, and even that I'm like, heck yeah, I agree, we did it, it's great in here, I love it. But if I had to pick one big moment, I think it would be the first time I worked overseas, which was in New Zealand. And like I didn't have a huge number of clients because it's like new city, new country, but it was more that moment of like, wow, I'm in this whole new space and there's still people that want to come get work from me, and that's like a huge compliment. Yeah.
New Zealand must have been like a cool place to visit for like the history of tattoos as well.
Yeah, and I feel like I didn't make enough use of that.
Oh, right.
I actually, I was in New Zealand for my honeymoon, but like I can't travel and not work. Like I'm a workaholic.
Oh my god.
So even when I was at the studio, they were like, oh, like what else are you doing here? Like I'm like, I'm on my honeymoon actually. And they're like, why are you here? Like go out and do romantic things with your partner. But like, yeah, I can't dodge working. I think that shows how much I like my job.
Yeah, that's so good. But do you ever feel like, well, from my own experience, like where I'm working right now, I really love it. But I also have, like, sometimes I feel guilty because I'm like, wake up and I'm like, oh, I have to go to work. And then it's like, well, you should love it because like you're doing something you enjoy and you're so lucky. Like, do you ever have that guilt feeling?
Yeah. And I think it's like nice hearing that someone else has that, because like me and my coworkers, like we talk about this every now and then, that like we do have jobs we love, and we're very lucky to have that and to thrive in our jobs and feel supported. But that doesn't mean we don't have those weeks where we're all feeling like, man, why are we doing this? Or like get up and you just have that mood of like, I don't feel like it.
Yeah. I
don't want to do this. Or you have moments of frustration where even part of the job you normally love is stressing you out.
Yeah.
It's so hard to remind myself like, shut up. Stop doing that. I think all it takes is for me to have like a nice client that day, or like to get into the studio and see what everyone's doing, and like maybe it's a design I'm doing that day that I'm like stoked on, to like kind of snap me out, and I'm like, okay, chill out.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, how do you do that? Do you have to like snap yourself out a little bit?
Yeah, I do, because I remind myself that the reason that I work is so that I can do like the things that I also enjoy.
Yeah.
But like I think it's nice that you work in an environment that is not so solitary. Like I don't either, but like with the creative part of it, I'm like the creative person at my office, and so it's like sometimes hard if you don't have people to like bounce off of and like re-energize that creative part. No,
that makes sense. It's a shame, like if only you could just tell them little key phrases to like get out on little cue cards. Be like, okay, Jess is having a stressful day. Oh yes, here's a little prompt about creativeness to like help you.
Literally. Run us through your day in a life as a creative.
Ooh, okay. I guess it does depend on like which job I'm doing, but there are days where I do both. So let's do one of those days, because that's probably the best one. Mondays, for example, I get up at like early in the morning for like my office job, which like I hate early mornings, but every office they like to do like 9:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
So I go and do that, and it's usually at my little desk. Everyone's got their rows of desks and computers, which is to me such a wild working environment. Lots of typing noises in the background, but it's like artist emails, I'm checking artist contracts, I'm making sure artists are getting paid for their jobs, which is great. We love to see artists get paid. I basically just do that, drink tea, and maybe have snacks until it's lunchtime, and then I get to say goodbye to all the office ladies and say, have fun working till 5, I'm finished, I'm a half a day worker. And I get to walk from our office through the city past like Chinatown and Victoria Square, which is like a great walk when it's not raining, to my tattoo studio. And I'll sit and have lunch and basically just begin prepping my stencils for my client. And it's like the perfect day when I have both, because instead of having this one long day where I feel maybe drained or tired by the end, it's almost like I restart at midday.
Yeah, it's like a variety.
It feels like a new day.
It's like when they say that back in the hunting gathering days, our days used to be like so much more varied.
Yes.
It's like that. We need to do lots of different things.
I will think of my Mondays as a hunter-gatherer day now.
Awesome.
Because it means even if I'm tattooing till like, 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. on that day, I've kind of still only been doing half a day of it.
Yeah.
So I go home and like still feel good even if I'm tired.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Do you find like almost working in an office environment as a creative like a bit kind of a culture shock in some ways?
Yeah, but I think because it feels like a novelty to me and because I'm only doing it 2 half days a week, it becomes fun.
Yeah. And
I speak to other people who are in the office like 4 or 5 days a week for their job, and they almost look offended when I tell them, oh my god, office work is so fun. And like, I love paperwork. I love doing like contracts and these things that maybe to them are really mundane. And they look at me like I'm like, I don't know, having like a weird moment. They're like, are you manic? Like, office job is not fun. So yeah, the novelty is there, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
You kind of spoke about this before, but what differentiates Half Pace Studio from other studios in Adelaide?
Well, apart from the fact that I've modelled it quite differently, even other studios that have a similar model, they do still have a higher rental cost from the artists. So there is still, I suppose, I presume, money going into a bit of a business entity or something that is the studio. So apart from us being as community-based as possible, just sort of, we like to break even. It's not about like earning on top, we're surviving. Apart from that, we are the only QPOC space owned in Adelaide, as in like queer people of colour. Because there's certainly other queer spaces and queer owned spaces, but I think the difference is where cultural diversity comes into a lot of those spaces and how people of colour are represented. Because even if people of colour are coming in as clientele, I think it's really wonderful then to see the artists in the space as a form of representation for themselves. There's like extra knowledge that comes in on how artists can deal with skin tones, because it means we've got quite a range of people in our space. Clients can come in and maybe they can see, for lack of a better term, like a reflection of them in an artist, and they can see what's possible for their tattoos, but also ask questions like, hey, what was your experience with this colour of ink? Or what's your experience with this area of the body? And that resource is right there in the space. And it means, for, even guest artists that come in that are like Caucasian, they're not people of colour, they're gaining that knowledge in our space too, because they're talking to us artists, they're learning these things. And like, I would love to see more of that cultural diversity ever in Adelaide. But I think right now, like, it's like a slower part of the industry here.
Right.
Yeah.
I saw you post something on your story. It was like a long time ago. I think it was like at the start of last year. But for some reason,
you have great memory then.
It's because it's stuck in my head, because I was doing an internship where like we visited this like we were doing like social media stuff, and we visited this other studio in Adelaide, and they were talking a lot about like being a queer safe studio. And then around the same time I saw you post something on your story, and I can't exactly remember what the sentiment was, but I think it was some kind of comment about like how the media, or like the big media giants in Adelaide, like were platforming different spaces as being queer friendly.
I think I know the one you're talking about, because, and I have spoken to a few other studio owners in Adelaide about it since, and I think purely because there needs to be a little bit more education, not just in our industry but in every industry, about how we discuss queer spaces. Because there was an article in a Adelaide paper, I don't remember which one, but it talked about how there are more queer and diverse spaces opening in Adelaide, but it specifically referenced women-owned spaces and like women-only spaces. And I think as someone who has a lot of trans clients and has a trans partner, for me, I find those kind of languages can be really tricky or can be really dangerous when you're advertising like a really open queer space, because often what happens is it starts making people question like, well, what are your definitions of those words? You know, does a women only space say no to people who are non-binary unless they lean into a women umbrella? Is it trans women friendly? Will they turn away trans men? And then how are they dictating if a client is trans or not? Are they asking invasive questions? Like, I think it's better to not want to give your space too many boxed in labels. Like, the whole thing about being an open, friendly queer space is to say all people can come into our space providing you are safe and friendly and providing you are just a nice person who has the same values, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's why I always lean to that label of queer-owned space or queer in general being more of that umbrella term. And the responses and conversations I've had with other artists has been really good, because when I posted that, I had a few people reach out saying like, oh my God, my studio was using that kind of language, and like it hadn't even occurred to us that it could make non-binary, gender non-conforming or trans clients unsure of how welcome they'll be here, you know? So it's the way they advertise themselves is so important, but they think that the language is inclusive. And it's like a very nuanced, deeper conversation that people could go on about for hours or write a PhD on or something. Like, it's there's too many things to kind of factor in, but
That's so interesting. Thank you for explaining that.
I even saw a post the other day and I like held back from sharing a posting about it, because sometimes I'm like, I just don't want to have arguments with people online. Like, I love having opinions. I'm a very opinionated person, but I know when to hold them in. But I saw an artist share that as a cis woman, she'd had some bad experiences with clients that were cis men before, and so she's decided moving forward she's only going to tattoo women.
Right.
And that really like struck a chord with me in like a negative way, because I think what you're doing is you are again like telling so many people in society, or so many people that identify different ways, like, you can't have my service, I'm not going to deem you a safe person, and I'm exclusive to this group of people that, I don't know, the wording starts entering that kind of turfy realm. My studio is a very anti-turf realm, so we're not having that.
We're going to move on to the rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Except after filming all the other episodes, like, it's not rapid fire, because I always ask follow-up questions.
Okay, so like
I'm nosy.
medium speed questions.
I should just call them like fun questions, like fun, bubbly questions.
All right.
So, what is the best and worst thing about Adelaide?
Ooh. I would say the same answer for both, which is that everyone knows everyone. Because it is equally bad, but also really good, and I love it.
Yeah, hell yeah. And where are we most likely to run into you when you're not at the studio?
Ooh. I would say at Mr. Viet, because I could go to lunch for there every day, off Rundle Mall, because obviously I can walk there. Or, man, that's so hard, because if I'm not at work and I'm not getting lunch, I'm at home.
Right.
I would literally just say that's it, yeah. Maybe on my walk to the bank when I do my boring errands once a week, which is so fun.
Do you have something to prove?
Sometimes I think I have to prove to myself that I can do anything that I'm putting my mind to, which is maybe why I pick up so many things to do and spread myself too thin. Is I'll like see an opportunity or see an application, I'm like, I can do that. I should do that. And I like convince myself I can do this thing. Yeah. But not to other people, which is probably a good way to approach things. Yeah.
Shout out another Adelaide creative who you admire.
Oh my God, just one?
Well, okay, I'll let you have 3.
Okay, I like that a lot more. Okay, I would say Elise tattoos at Golden Crow. I've had a few tattoos from her, but I just really admire her and her skill, but also her work-life balance, because she's a mum, she's an insanely talented illustrator, and she's an insanely good tattooer, and it's just like, she's doing it all. She's like full package. I would say Trong, who's an artist, visual artist, who did a residency at Ace Gallery last year. Does a lot of like workshops with children, does a huge amount of work about her Vietnamese background and exploring culture, and every single artwork by her I just like am obsessed with. And then I would probably say honestly my coworker Chira, and she'll hate that I'll pick her, but like she's been tattooing for so long and is like insanely talented, but I don't think gives herself enough credit. And when I come to work every day and I see her work, it like makes me want to get better at my job and makes me want to get better at my skill.
Aww.
And so yeah, she'll hate that I picked her.
Probably asked you this before, because if I've met anyone like more than once, I've definitely asked them
Okay.
this. But what is your Myers-Briggs personality type or your
Ooh.
horoscope?
Okay, my horoscope is I'm Virgo Sun, Gemini Moon, Scorpio Rising. My Myers-Briggs, I know I'm INTF?
Okay.
Is F the one at the end?
It's like you're an F or a T, which is
Oh,
like thinking or feeling.
INFP.
Yeah.
And then I think my other one is a J, the little like
Oh,
extra one
okay.
you can have.
So you can have like a T or an A at the end.
Why am I thinking that there was a J?
But there's also like, so the INFP is like the mediator.
Okay.
So I don't know if that like rings any bells. Like, no.
You know what? Last time I did the quiz was like 3 or 4 years, and all I remember is that I had the introvert and I had the feelings.
Yeah. Okay. Fight, flight, or freeze?
Ooh. Freeze and cry.
Oh.
And I only know this because the house that my partner and I used to live in, we had a loft bedroom, and there was like a little trap door in one of the corners that went to a void in the roof. And I think it was for like a storage space or something. But I used to tell my partner how I was scared of that door because I didn't know what was on the other side.
Yeah.
So one day they're like, I'll check the door, I'll check it and make sure there's nothing there. So they like get down on their hands and knees because it's a tiny little trap door. They open it and then they pretend to get like dragged in by something. And like a normal person would either like run to help and save or like run away. And I actually just fell to the ground and started wailing like a toddler. Like I was just full hysterics, like crying.
Oh, no.
And so if that was a life or death moment, like we'd both be dead.
Yeah.
And I've been disappointed in myself ever since.
Oh my gosh.
What are you, actually?
What am I? I think I'm fire.
Okay.
Well, I
That's
like
fair.
to think I'm fire, but I always remember like when, like, because I'm an elder sibling, and so I would be home alone with my sister, and if I felt like there was someone on the property, I would always like tell
Okay.
myself, I've got to protect her. Like,
That's really sweet. I like that.
thanks.
I'm
But
so-
who knows?
That makes me even more ashamed because, like, I'm an eldest sibling of 2 brothers and I'm still not fight because I expect them to be able to handle that for me. Like, they're taller than me now. They can do that.
Yeah, well, there you go. I don't know, like, I could say that, but in the moment, like,
You find
who knows?
out.
Yeah, and also I think it's, like, different. I feel like if I was with a friend and someone tried to, like, attack my friend, I would, like, fight. But if, like, someone tried to attack me, like, I'd just run.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Case by case.
Dream collaboration and why?
Ooh, easy answer. Soto Sosa, who's an artist from, I think currently she's located in America, but I'm pretty sure she might be European. But I have like merchandise from her. She's on my like dream goal of tattooers to get work from. But she's quite, I don't even know how to explain the fact that like I just think she's like the embodiment of me, like what I would love to be in the future. Do you know what I mean?
Cool, yeah.
Like I look at her and I'm like, that's the goal, because she like multi-talented, she's really established this style that's so uniquely her. Like you could see a work of hers anywhere in the world and you'd pick it as hers. And people
Right.
do travel to work from her because it's like she's curated this mostly like illustrations turned tattoos of like badass like femme figures. Like they are body confident for some people. For some people it's displaying like maybe their alter ego or like who they want to be. But I just feel like, yeah, I look at that and I'm like, if I could collaborate with her on like merchandise or like, you know, a tattoo flash sheet where we've done like half or like an artwork because she does gallery artwork, like I would not care if she even asked me to just like drew one line on one of her drawings and called it a collaboration. I'd be like, fuck yeah, like I'm gonna do that.
Oh, that's nice. So that's the rapid fire over. Rapid fire.
Okay.
What advice would you give your younger self who was just getting started?
I'm not sure because I could very easily like impart all the knowledge I have now and kind of like info dump on young me if I could have a conversation with her. But I'm definitely one of those people that's come to, I guess, have that point of view that like everything that I've maybe done wrong has led to where I am now.
Yeah.
So if I changed my opinion younger, like maybe it wouldn't have worked out for me, or maybe I'd be somewhere else.
Don't mess with history, you know?
Yeah. So I'd either not even want to speak to myself, or I'd just say like, keep doing what you're doing. Don't change anything.
Yeah.
Even if you're doing something weird, just keep doing it.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you're a fan of Yoko Ono.
That's always like an interesting question to me because like, yeah, my username is based off of it, which was a bit of a play on the fact that when I was in high school, I had a boyfriend that was in a band and they asked me to manage them, which I didn't actually have to do a lot for. Like I attended their meetings and helped out with their merch sales and merch designs and stuff. But I think we were all very young and we didn't realise that managers also organised gigs and like did
Right.
so I didn't have to do it, which was great. But there was always this joke from like other people and a few of them of me being like a Yoko Ono because I was a band member's partner.
Yeah.
And that when people say it often has this negative connotation because people say, you know,
she broke up the band.
it's like a whole narrative, and whether or not you like the Beatles or you like John Lennon or you like Yoko Ono, like that's your own thing. I think for me it was more like that was said to me in this way that was meant to be like a negative thing and also typecasting because I was a young Asian and it was like me reclaiming that as like being okay with them saying those negative things and like owning it back. But then when I was in uni, I did learn a little bit about her visual arts because we were doing art history, learning about contemporary art. And I kind of like that the art she does, a lot of people hates because it's like she's challenging what an artwork is.
Yeah.
She's like challenging how you use a gallery space. And again, it's like people can critique that and be negative, but at the end of the day, like she's doing something.
Yeah.
She's like challenging your opinions and I think that's great. So maybe that's more what I resonated with, you know? Yeah.
I actually really like her music, which many people hate it.
And I've actually never listened to it.
Right.
So there we go. Like I
have
haven't even, like I have a tattoo of Yoko Ono, but I haven't even done the deep dive. And I think it's because I looked at her visual arts career more. But yeah, there's more for me to explore.
I feel like, people are like, oh, what is that? It's so weird and out there. I'm like, her music was like more creative than the Beatles' music, I feel like, because it was more like experimental and stuff.
And see, that's the realms of like creativeness or art that I really like because it's very easy to make something palatable or very easy to make something people like that you're creating for your audience.
Yeah.
But I think when you're creating something that's like so for you that maybe other people don't get it or they don't like it, like that's far more authentic. And it's kind of more interesting to see how audiences react to something that challenges them.
Yeah.
You know? I'd probably rather make work that people are challenged by, but at the same time I don't go into that realm because I'm not as famous as Yoko Ono. I don't have a bunch of money to live on. I still have to make a living. It's the balance of like what's authentically me and what does challenge my style, but is still like can be enjoyed by people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you think could be changed or implemented in Adelaide that you think would make it easier for like up and coming tattoo artists?
I think a couple things. I think like the general opinions and stigma about tattoos that are outside of the tattoo community. Tattoo community meaning like not just workers of the industry, but like tattooed people.
Right.
Because you still have those opinions from family members and friends where they say to an aspiring tattoo artist or someone who's getting into making a portfolio, like, oh, that's not a real job.
Yeah.
Oh, that's unattainable. Oh, do something else. Have a backup option. And it's not letting people feel like they can actually pursue that and like engage fully and like be dedicated to it. And then at the same time, it's, I guess, allowing more spaces to open. And I say that because when we leased our studio, I realized how hard it is to find property owners and real estate agents that don't hear tattoo studio and like panic.
Right.
Like even when I needed to get like paperwork done, or I needed to get like similar to renting a house, like you have to put a deposit in for a rental. Even doing that through the bank was like, oh, you like permanent tattoos or cosmetic tattoos? And I say permanent, and like it's the conversation changes, because people view like aesthetic cosmetic tattoos or that realm of beauty as one thing, you know, but then body art and tattoos, it's like, oh, there's a negative stigma, and I'm hearing that and I don't like it, or I'm suspicious of it and I'm not sure what to think, because I think that general society opinion is what then will like foster better opinions and like make people feel like they can do it.
Do you think it's easier to sell a painting or a tattoo in 2024?
Oh, definitely a tattoo, I think, because let's say, for example, like the average cost of some of my tattoos might be between $250 to $500. People invest in tattoos because they're great, they're so fun, but you get them forever and you're looking at them all the time. I think our generation, or actually people in general, there is a different hierarchy or appreciation they put on physical art, because I've done exhibitions with people before, like curated exhibitions, where some really amazing art is also between the prices of $250 to $500, and maybe only one thing sells or nothing sells. And yeah, it's interesting that people don't enter a gallery space and go, I've got some Christmas money, or I have some money saved. That's a great artwork. I want to own that and like have that in my house to look at. Instead, they go, I'll book a tattoo. And it's like very different.
Because that contributes to their personal brand.
Yeah. It's and maybe it is because at the end of the day, like humans, like us in general, we are very self-centered or narcissistic at the end of the day. Even if we say we're not. I think it's all about how we see ourselves in the mirror, but also what we think of other people when they see us. And if you buy a really cool painting by a talented painter, you're not carrying that around with you every day when you go out. You know? I think when something becomes very personal, and for us, some people, it's hard for them to justify. There almost has to be this element of like, what do I do with that painting? How many people will see it?
Out of it?
Yeah. Will I hang it somewhere in my house that guests will see it, or other people will see it?
We've talked about like kind of how the tattoo industry isn't always the safest place for everyone. What would you say to a young person who is kind of facing like bigotry and gatekeeping in the industry? Like maybe they're doing an apprenticeship at a studio or something like that.
I mean, having been in that situation and having other co-workers that were in that situation, I think it's about realizing how easy it actually is to walk away. I think there's this idea that because the industry is so small and the options of spaces are far less than many other industries, you almost trick yourself into this idea that like, okay, I'm having a bad time and I'm experiencing all these negative things, but I can't leave because where else will I go? And it's a scary thing, you know? It's a scary thing to know that the industry is so small, and to worry, will I still find another space that's equally as bad? Will I like enter the unknown and maybe never work again? But it's about going like, no, it's okay to leave and to get to know other people and reach out to those people. I mean, 2 of my co-workers at the moment were in studios they were unhappy in, and all it took was for them to reach out to us and communicate and say, I'm in an unsafe situation, or I'm in a place that doesn't help me thrive. Can you help me? And the worst case scenario is that those people might say, no, but I know someone else who can, or I can help direct you. Because a lot of us that are in nice studios and have like helpful, nice mentalities, we don't want to see other people go through bad situations. Like we're going to kind of help a little tattoo orphanage kind of hand people on. Like, especially like when you've been through the bad situation yourself, it's so much easier to empathize with and want to help other people who are in that, because you know firsthand how tough it is. So even actually, you know, for people starting an apprenticeship where maybe their workplace is still good but they've just started, there's always a chance that things can go sour. So it's always good to make lots of friends in the industry, you know, and then you feel like if you ever need, you have that network there, you have people you can call on.
So why have you chosen to keep creating in Adelaide specifically?
I think I just really love Adelaide. Like, I like traveling to work. I always love going to Melbourne to work. But because I was born and raised here, and it's like a quiet, gentle city compared to other cities. Cost of living is always going up, but I still feel like in Adelaide it's a little bit easier. I think I just feel comfortable. And like, the other thing I've always thought about the creative industry specifically is like there's people who be in Adelaide and they leave. They leave to places like Melbourne and Sydney to find bigger community, to find bigger opportunities, or it's almost like people view it as the next stage in a career pathway.
Yeah.
But I think what that does is it hinders our community from actually growing, and it hinders our community from creating those opportunities, because everyone just default thinks, well, if you want that, you leave. So if we can have at least some of us remain here, I'd like to think it would improve every part of the industry. And like network between cities is always great, but like, yeah, I think Adelaide needs to be, we need to put in more effort to Adelaide basically.
Yeah. Love that. And do you have a favourite theme that you like exploring in your art?
I think it depends on which realm of my art. Like for tattooing, I always reach towards like art history, like European art history mostly, like Renaissance imagery, classical paintings, Grecian sculptures. And I think that's influenced a lot by my uni education, like doing art history. We had to do life drawing, lots of research into particularly European art. And I also realized how everyone can connect their own associations with that. Like some people will be like, oh, this painting that's well known, my family had a print of it. Or I really love this sculpture because I saw it in a gallery and I resonated with it. Or there's this mythology behind this painting and I want to get it. So like that's an interesting realm for me for that to exist in. But then for my own personal art practice, that doesn't have a place, because it's like, what's my personal connection to that realm of art outside of my education and outside of doing it for clients? I don't have this like strong, deep connection.
Right.
So instead I find my references come more from like my heritage. So there's a lot of looking at growing up Asian in Australia. It's like the imagery we attach to being Asian in Australia. A lot of the consumerism that's associated with Asian culture versus maybe traditional imagery. And kind of for the same reasons, like I don't transfer that a lot into tattooing, because I think, well, I have an Asian population that will come and get tattooed by me and get that imagery, but then outside of that, what are other people's deep connections to that? Not as much. So I think like my influences have their places, and there's like the little tiny like drops of crossovers, but I kind of enjoy that they're quite separate and I get to explore things in very different realms.
Yeah. So have you got any projects coming up like in the near future? Anything that you're working on?
Yeah, I do actually. I've got a solo exhibition in June, because I put a painting of mine in a contemporary art prize last year at Gallery M, which is near like Marion shopping centre area, like a little bit down south. And I basically got an award, which was an exhibition in the space, and it was like a great motivation for me to knuckle down and work on my practice, because I think since I was in final year uni, I've only really had one exhibition where I actually spent time in my studio and worked on things.
Right.
And I've been a very sporadic creator since then. Like, you know, I have a month of tattooing and I'm too tired to even sit and draw a drawing. So yeah, it's great that I can create a whole body of works, and I've started making a few things and just kind of figuring out slowly between now and end of May like what that show will be. So I have no working title for it. I have no base concept. I'll kind of let that form. And then I have another exhibition in June that I'm curating, and that's a whole group of tattoo artists I've approached. And I've basically said to them, like, tattooing and art historically or like culturally in contemporary society has like been very separated. There's not a huge amount of tattooing that crosses into contemporary art spaces like galleries. And so I've just said to them, like, yeah, I want to do this exhibition where instead of presenting your tattoos, I want you to present something else that you make, whether that's an illustration or a painting or something that lets you explore your creativity. And I think because I love doing that so much, I'm just like trying to motivate everyone else to do it. So it'll be interesting to see how that all comes together and all these different styles transfer from their regular like skin canvases to physical art. And I'm early stages of brainstorming, but I'd love to find a way to make it a crowdfunding or fundraising experience, because a lot of us as tattoo artists, like, we do already make an income on our art, and I think it'd be nice to find a way for us to just like maybe auction our artworks off or do something that is a little bit more community based,
Mm-hmm.
because we're showing at the Wheatie, which is the Wheatsheaf Hotel in Theberton, and it's such a community space. Like they've done markets for uni students who are doing like the creative arts degrees. They've had people who are ceramicists setting up markets. They've had local artists showing work, and so it's like this sense of community and doing things for the local community that it just makes sense to reflect when we show work there.
Totally.
And then I have one more exhibition this year, which is at Praxis Art Space in Bowden.
Mm-hmm.
That's in November. And it's me and a few other artists exploring romanticism. So it's a little bit more of like a traditional white wall gallery space, a little bit more from our backgrounds as visual artists.
Mm-hmm.
So it's exploring like alternate realities, like dark, eerie kind of versions of current reality.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit more maybe experimental, based on what I've heard everyone is thinking of making. Just an excuse to all delve into something a little bit different, I suppose.
That sounds really cool. Do you mean romanticism? Is that like an art jargon word?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So like a big movement in, I think it was like kind of early 20th century in the art, was this concept of like new romanticism, which was kind of like technology was picking up. Society was very much changing in how much time we spent with the natural world versus with city structures and buildings and technologies that started to kind of take off. And artists were trying to find a way to reconnect with nature or display nature, whether that's in like paintings and sculpture and installation. But this recognition that we can't have that perfect world where everything goes back to the full nature. There's always going to be this good comes with the bad or vice versa. So you'd often see like kind of grey-toned eerie landscape depictions or figures in spaces that have a sense of like uncanny or something that almost seems unsettling, but then at face value you're like, oh, but it's beautiful. And it's not knowing what that weird teetering edge is. And I think now even more so we're looking at like technology picking up at a new level. You know, everyone's talking about like AI and like all these digital spaces, and I wanted to get everyone to rethink that, 100 years after it was initially a thing, is like, it's so different now. What's our new look at these eerie spaces or that middle ground,
That sounds really interesting. I'll have to come see that one.
Okay. I will expect to see that.
What will the life of Chira look like when you are 100% unafraid and 100% qualified?
I thought you were saying 100 years old, and I was going to be like, I'm not going to be here.
I'm not making it that far.
I mean, look, I think I'm so suspicious of people that ever say they're 100% qualified at anything. And even like people who've worked in my industry for like 20, 30 years, we almost just expect to always be saying, I'm still learning and I'm still figuring out. Those are the people I trust more.
Oh, right, yeah.
So I think I would never want to consider myself 100% qualified or 100% unafraid, because like it's good to still be scared of things. But in like an ideal world where that was the case, like I think I would own my dream workspace, which would be like all of my interests and outlets kind of like bundled into one, where people are entering a space where it's like, oh, I've walked into a white wall gallery space that shows contemporary local artists, but if I go through the door at the back, it's the tattoo studio, and like those spaces can mingle, and like spaces can be offered to tattoo artists to explore contemporary art, or like collaborations between, or residencies and things like that. And it sounds in my head like a very big job to tackle that, so it is this kind of maybe one day kind of like pipe dream thing, but like maybe.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, I feel like you're getting close. Anyway, like...
I mean, look, if commercial real estate doesn't get too expensive in the future, then like, great, I will.
Do you rent the half-pay studio?
Yeah. To buy commercial real estate is like, it's like buying a house. Like, it's a big investment.
Right.
I got too much HEX debt to my name for a bank to give me a loan, I think.
Right.
I think, unless I win the lottery anytime soon, I'll be playing the rental game like everyone else.
And do you have like a call to action of how people can support you and your art?
I don't know. I think for tattoo artists in general, it's just like, if you don't have money or want to get a physical tattoo, it's like now is the best time to even just be sharing artists' work. Like that's the same for visual artists. Like our network and the stretch of our art to people is so heavily reliant on word of mouth and sharing in community. So if you just see an artwork you like or you see a tattoo you like, just like send it to your friend and be like, that's cool, or like share it in general, you know? We don't ask too much.
At Poko_Ono.
Yes.
Thank you so much. That's it.
Thank you.
Yay! Okay.
This podcast was shot by Daphne Boston Zoglu and was a Jessica Rowe creative production.